Welcome to this presentation, Planning for ITIL and the Intelligent Customer Framework, Part 1 of 3. Part 1 will discuss a robust governance structure that you need to develop. Part 2 will discuss how to plan the ITIL development, and Part 3 will discuss the measurements and benefits of using a robust governance structure with an ITIL framework. The presentations will benefit clients that are going to be managing multiple suppliers across service boundaries whilst adopting the intelligent customer role. Managing multiple suppliers across service boundaries is obviously a challenge. So how do we ensure that we'll be managing suppliers effectively across these different service boundaries? And how do we ensure that the suppliers themselves are effectively communicating with each other? What services should we retain? Which services should we outsource? What is the current IT budget aspirations? What savings and benefits are required? So with these particular key business requirements, how should we approach our planning? What is the client appetite for risk? Do you wish to have a single supplier acting as an integrator to manage other suppliers, or will you be adopting this role internally? What is the internal maturity of knowledge across the IT skills? Have you got the relevant experience to be managing all of these suppliers? So what you should first do is focus internally on governance. If you have a robust governance structure with robust operating groups at various layers of the organization, this will assist to keep all of the processes common across the service boundaries. So start thinking about your standards that you're going to adopt. ISO 20000, for example, which is in effect ITIL. ISO 27001 for security. For measuring, you could be adopting the CMM approach, which is the Capability Maturity Model. This works very well with ITIL. And Prince 2, for example, for project management. You may have COBIT, you may have Six Sigma. If all of these are declared up front, they can all be part of your governance structure. Think about your IT strategy, how corporate change is going to work, how operational change is going to work, how major incident management is going to dovetail into IT service continuity and business continuity planning. Think about the impact on the business and how reporting is going to work, and how the service monitoring across the service boundaries is going to interface with each other. You obviously need common frameworks and standards to do all of this. So this presentation looks at how we can develop frameworks such as ITIL to develop the Intelligent Customer Framework model. We're going to be adopting 3 distinct layers of management, concentrating on people, process and technology through strategic layers, tactical layers and operational layers of the business. With ITIL, most people that have come across ITIL addresses questions such as: where do we start from? Where do we want to be? How are we going to get there? So okay, let's start asking some questions about where do we start from. Have you formal processes? Are there accountable process owners? Are there formal links associated with processes? Are the dependencies known? Are there formal operational level agreements and formal service level agreements? Have staff received formal training for their processes? Do they understand them? Do operational teams work in silo, or are these connected? Have we established any benchmarking criteria to manage suppliers? But the biggest question is, do we have sufficient knowledge to be able to create the benchmarking criteria to manage suppliers? So, now we've established where we are today, what do we need to do now? You do need a formal library of detailed ITIL process designs. You can obtain these fairly simply by purchasing them from very good service management organisations. You can certainly purchase them through our company, theprimagroup.com. Giving you an example, a change process design will be about £1,000. To develop this internally, this could take you longer than 3 months. But you'll be able to hit the ground running with our documentation and start developing a very good supplier-client process within a week. The benefits of having these documents will be to present them to suppliers and say, well, this is how we do service management. So how do you do service management, and can we see your process designs? There needs to be no ambiguity with these processes. Your process owners need to be educated to understand these processes as they're developed. Operational level agreements and service level agreements need to be established between the processes. We need to build a continual service improvement process linked to the formal governance structure. So therefore, if you have a formal governance structure with operating groups at each layer of the business, these are some of the issues that I'll be discussing with you later. We need to allocate a gold, silver, bronze availability, which will maximize the usage of service level agreements. And these will be dovetailed with your IT service continuity and capacity processes. Incident management and major incident management, problem management, configuration management, or should I now say service asset configuration management, release management, transition management. How are all of these going to operate? With the detailed designs, it can be very, very easy to establish the tactical requirements of a supplier and the requirements of the internal IT client. Once you have the designs, you need to be publishing who is who. You need to document and communicate who owns the processes and how the processes will be advertised. The processes should be online for all parties to be able to use. This is particularly useful for new staff. How do we measure our success? There will be several ways and methods in which to recognize process success, and these can be done in surveys, things like that, but on a more formal basis, CMM, the Capability Maturity Model, will be able to measure the process efficiency and where things may be going wrong. You need to get to a certain level of maturity, both supplier and client, to understand how you're progressing. So how will this benefit and affect you if you're not part of service management, but you're part of IT? You could perhaps be part of networking, for example. You'll be asked to attend service improvement forums now and again. You'll be asked for your input into the processes, but what you're looking to try and achieve by using all parties outside of service management is an end-to-end service management cycle. So how can you help? Executive support is definitely required. Be supportive of the formal relationships that process owners wish to introduce, and above all, make sure the process owners receive the training to do the job. This may mean slightly different patterns of working, but it will all produce more meaningful results and better working relationships. ITIL takes time to embed, but once a period of maturity is established, the results are magnified. Industry analysts such as Gartner advocate that ITIL frameworks, supported with a governance structure, have become the de facto standard for service management globally. Contracts should insist that suppliers have or will achieve ISO 20000 to prove that they also adopt service management principles effectively, to support your client site. So, to summarize, we've established that we need formal ITIL processes. We need formal benchmarking tools. We need a formal governance structure. We need baseline, CSFs, critical success factors, and KPIs, key performance indicators. We need to be able to measure and assess internal processes. We need staff to be trained to understand these processes. The next slide demonstrates how other industry professionals such as Gartner and Forrester advocate the use of a formal governance structure framework using ITIL, which empowers the client to manage multiple supplier environments. So as we look through this particular diagram, we see the end-to-end life cycle of management, which is clear from defining the relationships, the expectations and interactions, documenting the dependencies through to the day-to-day management using internal performance groups, such as process owners talking to supplier process owners. A change manager for the client will talk to a change manager of the supplier. Establishment of the internal design authority group. Again, this could be representatives of the suppliers and representatives of the client. Document governance standards or frameworks to be in place at the client site up front, so everyone is aware of what you're going to be using. The governance structure will also declare how audits will be performed to assess a supplier, and the supplier must sign up for this. How continual service improvement will work, and you're going to have suppliers and internal IT on the service improvement forums. How integrated tooling will be shared, particularly interesting for event monitoring, and how you do end-to-end availability monitoring. How transition management will be managed, a vital piece to ensure service introduction is handled adequately. So all of this can be incorporated into a simple governance structure as shown below. So if we look at the end user support activities, they'll be feeding their issues and problems up through the service desks so that day-to-day process activities continue to support the users. The more serious issues will be escalated to the Process Improvement Forum, which is a forum chaired and run by process owners of the client, with involvement and participation of the suppliers, process owners. Again, if funding is required for any improvement activities, these can be fed up to the Service Management Integration Group, or call it whatever you wish, an ICT board for example. It's not just for approval purposes, but the Process Improvement Forum should have or create the clarity and vision of all service improvements that are ongoing. And this should be the most active part of the business in terms of an intelligent customer support function. The next diagram shows quite clearly how a governance structure is going to work. So if we look at the top layer coming now, this declares the governance structure and all the standards that are going to be adopted. And this could be called the strategic layer. Service management processes, ownership and tools, this could be declared the tactical layer and could include things like the technical design authority, the change groups, the process owners, the process owner improvement forum. All the suppliers will adopt the same operating processes and the same governance structure. I hope that was interesting for the first part of this presentation. Part 2 will now look at how ITIL can be developed as part of this governance structure. Thank you for listening.